Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Rewilded Wellness podcast. It is I, Lydia Joy, your triple Virgo guide. I gotta say, you guys, I have really been enjoying this Virgo season. It's like a recalibration for me every year. I just got back from a family vacation with my four sons. They are 26, 22, 20, and 18. The wild part is it was like the first time we've all gone away together for vacation in over a decade. The last trip we took, the last family trip vacation, was the summer of 2014. That was right before I ran my very first hair tissue mineral analysis. So for me, this trip was a big deal. It felt like such a full circle moment. It was quite celebratory. And the ocean, the sand, the sun, all of it gave me a deep recharge. I caught some epic sunrises, you guys. And, they reminded me yet again in a deeper way of how much our environment really imprints itself on us, right? Biologically, emotionally, energetically. Nature truly recalibrates us. And that connects directly into what I want to share with you today. 5 years ago, I was living in transitional housing after leaving a water damaged, moldy home that was pretty much wrecking my health. And I was only a few months out of that environment, and my body was still in full reactive mode. If you've ever been there, when you leave the mold, it's not like you feel instantly better. Your body's like, all right, we're out of here. We can deal with some stuff. And so it's like, the inflammatory cascade hits. You've got the whatever symptoms, sneezing, itching, watery eyes, fatigue, brain fog, inflammation galore. It makes your system reactive and stressed, and that becomes a loop, the whole thing. And it felt like my entire day was like spent just trying to keep my body calm. Not to mention, this was like 2020, pretty much right around March. So there was that too. And by that point, I already knew there was no way I'm doing some kind of crazy intense mold protocol. No way. My body was too sensitive, and deep down, I didn't want that path. I didn't want like some kind of quick fix. I really wanted a different path, a way out of that reactive state that would last. And that's when I had a pivotal conversation with Michelle Chatham. She was on the podcast, by the way, back in 2020. She was the first one who really pressed on me the importance of circadian biology in a way that like really stuck with me. She said I have to have my thyroid on point. I need to live in sync according to my haplotype, year round, with the light, with the dark. Make sure I match my environment to my heredity to heal fully. She asked me, if I'd run thyroid labs, which I hadn't at that time. I had done it a bunch of times previous, so I kind of knew my patterning. And she was intense. She was like, your thyroid needs to be on point. I was like, oh, damn, she is in it. And I actually appreciated her conviction, honestly, because if something's truly, truly important, I want to understand why. So I appreciated her passion, and it led me down a deep dive, ever since. And she told me something that really stuck, because she knew my body of work. She knew where I was at. She knew the whole mineral piece was something that I was focused on. She said, if you want to take your mineral journey further, you really need to make sure you're living in an environment where your body can express itself fully, right? Right. So understanding, your own haplotype, your heredity, like where you would have lived in the world and how your body can, actually resource from nature in that environment. Right. So turns out I do live in the region that is conducive to my heredity. But if I didn't, she was like, you probably want to consider like moving somewhere where you can do that so that you can throw off mold safely, without hurting yourself to hell and back and it being this whole crazy thing. And so with that understanding, I began to really deepen my environmental work for myself, which I'll tell you at first it wasn't easy because it was 2020, y'all. That was a crazy year in and of itself. But her big thing was increase your gains, crowd out your drains. Start with your environment, right? And your voltage. And a lot of it felt somewhat like Greek to me at the time. She was talking voltage, redox potential, haplotypes, all these concepts that I hadn't yet deeply understood or connected. She pointed me towards tons of people's body of work, right? Jerry Tennant's work on healing his voltage, Chris Cross of EMR Tech, who I also had on the podcast, who was educated deeply by Jack Cruz. And, he had some great, Chris had some great resources and such for his company, EMR Tech, which is where I bought my red light from. And he had some good redox insights and so on and so forth. She also taught me about Eileen Cusack's body of work and the emotional tuning with the tuning forks. There's just was so much. And that was really the start of an entirely new chapter for me. And ever since, I've really been walking that path, learning and applying the principles of, circadian biology, evolutionary biology, sunlight, minerals, hydration, emotional regulation, and all that jazz, which is why here I am emphasizing this rewilded wellness aspect, right? And let me tell you, it's not only has it transformed my health, but it really has completely reshaped how I understand what true healing actually looks like in a world that's left us really confused between, the mainstream narrative, the mainstream systems, mainstream medicine, quick fix culture, the way society has conditioned us to order our lives, right? So, I want to talk about healing as voltage. This is Jerry Tennant's concept, healing is voltage. He has a whole book on it. I've gone back and revisited his work every single year for the last 5 years. It's so deep, it's so rich, it's so meaty. It's a lot to really understand. And so for me, I was like, there's no way I can conceptualize or understand or even begin to embody this in any short amount of time. There's so much here, there's so much to unravel. So every year is just okay, how can I deepen this in my life, right? So every cell in your body is like a tiny battery. That battery has to hold a strong charge in order to do its job, right? It's got to be able to repair. It's got to be able to detox. It's got to be able to regenerate. It's got to be able to communicate. And when that charge drops and when the voltage is low, everything from your thyroid to your brain fog to your immunity starts to falter. Now, I know this can sound abstract, so let's ground it. We've been hearing so much about mitochondria lately. It's like, oh no, it almost has become a buzzword, right? These, energy factories in our cells, they're designed to generate this electrical current through the movement of electrons down the electron transport chain. And that current builds the ATP, which is your energy currency, but it also structures the water inside your cells into what's called exclusion zone water. So you're hearing about easy water a lot lately too, right? But we can think of it like a liquid crystal lattice that conducts charge, right? So without it, your cells are kind of like dying batteries, like sitting in stagnant water. So here's where the voltage triad comes in that I want to be talking about in this episode, right? We have to start with sunlight, okay? It's our number one nutrient. And light is information, okay? So morning sunlight in particular tells your mitochondria to kickstart that electron flow. The photons literally charge your batteries. Sunlight builds structured water inside your cells and synchronizes your circadian rhythm. So your thyroid, your adrenals, and all your hormones know what time it is. Okay? Not the modern clock time exactly, the circadian time for your communication of all your hormones in your body. So if your light environment is off, say you're inside all day and you're exposed to like blue light, bright light, all these modern lights, especially if you're exposed to a lot of it at night, particularly blue light, your thyroid cannot calibrate properly. Even if your labs look okay, it's not just a gland problem. It's a timing and energy problem. A lot of people have labs that look okay, but they don't feel good. They do not feel okay. And over the years that I've been doing the hair tissue mineral analysis, people come with like, oh, my doctor said my thyroid labs were fine, but then we look at their hair tests and we see the cellular picture. And it's like, oh, you kind of are presenting hypothyroid here cellularly. It's just not hasn't arrived in your blood yet. So when we think about minerals, right, they are like the wiring, the switches that allow the current to move, right? So we got copper, magnesium, potassium, sodium. They help regulate that electron transport, the ATP production, and how well your mitochondria can generate that voltage. So if you don't have adequate minerals, you don't have adequate spark, and they just don't operate in isolation. So there's a lot going on, right? We know that your body can't use copper well without ceruloplasmin, which requires retinol and protein and a healthy liver, right? Your body won't hold magnesium well if you're chronically stressed or you're also potassium deficient. um, you know, Minerals can have like a feminine uh essence, right? In that sense, they can be receptive, they can be coordinating, they can be relational, and they can organize and guide the current, but they're easily disrupted without the right environment. And then, of course, we have the hydration piece. This is like something we can never stop talking about because none of us have gotten it right being alive on the planet now. It's not just water. It's the quality of water is important, yes, but it's water structured by minerals and light, right? We know that hydration's not about pounding the water, right? Like plain water is not going to hydrate you. We know this now, right? It's like it's very apparent by the amount of electrolyte products that there are in existence today. Oh my word. It's really about creating an internal terrain where water can hold charge and conduct current. So we need salt, we need trace minerals, we need sunlight. Okay, those three. All of that determines whether your water is going to be alive and conductive or stagnant and diluting. Okay. So why does this matter for the thyroid? Well, I feel like the thyroid's like the canary in the coal mine. It's like one of the first glands to show signs of low cellular energy. It's one of the first things many people recognize is going on in their system. Medical recognizes it. Holistic health space has recognized it. We've obsessively talked about the thyroid for a while. So, almost everyone knows like something about the thyroid, right? And that's because it really plays a big role in running your metabolism and making sure all your functions are going. So if your voltage is low, you're going to see it in all the things that the thyroid needs to do to help regulate the body, right? So like your basal body temperature will be low. You'll have a more sluggish conversion of T4 to T3. Obviously, you'll have fatigue, you'll probably have brain fog, and you will have a tendency for pathogens to thrive in your body. Okay, this doesn't mean you have like a broken thyroid. It means that your thyroid can't express properly inside a system that's running on low charge. My labs used to always come up with low reverse T3, right? And it took me a while to figure out what the heck do we do with that? Because not a lot of people were talking about that back then. And so here's the thing. The bottom line is, and then Michelle was trying to get at was your thyroid can't calibrate unless your entire environment is aligned, right? You need tight circadian matching. You need the morning light. You need to stop draining your voltage and start stacking your gains. So I was getting the minerals in, but it wasn't enough. I wasn't getting adequate sunlight. I was getting too much crappy light still. Mostly half of the year. Like I hadn't really mastered light entirely, and I definitely was not doing it well at all during the winter. Okay. So it really, really clicked for me because, single mom. I had, if I was not like doing well, the whole family was not doing well. So it was like, okay, mission go. So I realized, right, like I'm not here to fix my thyroid. I'm here to restore capacity. I'm here to hold a charge and sustain it. Right? So if you only take minerals without light, you're missing the switch. If you only focus on light without minerals, you don't have the wiring. And if you hydrate without structure, you just dilute your charge. But together, all of them, sunlight, minerals, hydration, you rebuild your voltage. You create the conditions where the thyroid doesn't have to scream for help and where pathogens can't hijack your energy because the terrain itself is strong. All right, so that's like kind of the recap of what voltage really is. In case you didn't know, I did do an episode on that in the summer of 2022. What the heck is voltage? Something like that. So if everyone only focused on this piece, like getting up, getting some morning sunlight, bring in the minerals, hydrate wisely, they'd already be doing more for their metabolic health than 90% of the fancy protocols out there. I promise you, every single person, including practitioners, of which I've taught hundreds, we're not doing this piece right. And we're still not quite there yet. I mean, some people are getting the memo. They're getting the memo. They're putting salt in their water. They know they got to remineralize their water. But we're not quite there yet. All right. So I'm calling it the voltage triad, and I'm going to keep going, okay? I want to go a little deeper, right? I know we've all heard of them separately before, but they only work fully together, okay? So sunlight, it's your master switch, first domino. When photons hit your skin and your eyes in the morning, they do more than just make you feel awake. They activate your suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is the master clock in your brain, and that sets your circadian rhythm. It tells your thyroid, it tells your adrenals, it tells your mitochondria, hey, it's time to do XYZ PDQ. It's like the marching orders are there, right? On the cellular level, those photons are absorbed by cytochrome C oxidase in your mitochondria. And it's literally charging the electron transport chain, creating ATP. Let's talk energy to simplify it. But it doesn't stop there. The ATP doesn't just fuel reactions, it organizes water in your cells into structured gel-like layers that hold and transmit charge. So without sunlight, you can load up on minerals and supplements and never see major traction because the switch to turn that system on never got flipped. All right, so minerals are like the wiring and relays, right? They're the conductive pathways. You can think of your body as an electrical grid. Copper's like the wiring. It lets the electrons move smoothly down the mitochondrial chain so you can actually make ATP. Magnesium stabilizes it, makes it more usable. Potassium sets the resting potential of your cell membranes, the baseline voltage that you live on. Sodium creates the gradients to move water, nutrients in and out. And here's the kicker. These minerals don't just support the thyroid. They're literally the tools your mitochondria and enzymes need to run energy production. Okay? And this is like the feminine quality of minerals, if you will. They don't force anything. They receive and direct. They require the environment, right? Sunlight, hydration, proteins, retinol, liver function, yada, yada. We could probably go on to be in place to fully activate. So again, copper without ceruloplasmin is just free metal floating around. Magnesium without proper vitamin D and light isn't held in the cell. And this is why people often feel like they're like, I want to say chasing minerals, because without the environment, the minerals can't actually truly do their job. And so, okay, hydration, that's like the conductor, right? Now, again, I don't mean just drinking water, okay? When we talk about hydration, it's cellular and it's about the structure of the water, right? It's how the water is organized into a crystalline matrix by minerals and light. Okay, and that structured water is what actually conducts the voltage your mitochondria generate. So if your water is unstructured, let's say you're just chugging plain filtered water, you don't have the minerals, you don't have the light exposure, you're diluting your electrolytes and you're weakening your conductivity. But if your water is mineralized, if your cells are bathed in sunlight, you create a living charged gel that your entire electrical system runs on. So here's the big picture takeaway. Sunlight provides the spark, minerals provide the wiring, hydration provides the conductive medium. You miss one and the system is incomplete. It's like trying to, I don't know, like turn on a lamp and there's no bulb, or drive a car with no wiring harness. Um, so when all three are present, your thyroid, your adrenals, your brain, your immunity, everything calibrates around that steady charge. And that's when your body stops reacting to every little thing. Ask me how I know. That's when you move from like surviving the day, which was me back then, into actually building resilience. Now, I want to go further. I want to talk about how pathogens thrive in low voltage environments. Now, one of the challenges I faced back then was really understanding, like deeply understanding my chemical sensitivities. Like I knew for years all my triggers. I knew what they were. I even knew to some degree my genetic mutations were playing a role and how to support them. Hadn't figured it all out quite yet. And my body would constantly be under siege anytime I was in a stressful period of life and I was exposed to the same triggers. Okay. So I knew the pattern. Now, I was exhausted from living that way, constantly monitoring, always reacting, and I had emotions around this. Like, obviously, it had become traumatic to me because it was a pattern. Right. So I was no longer interested in hype or fear around mold or pathogens. I was so over it. I needed the straight biology, why my body was stuck, how I could create an environment for real healing. So that's to me where the cellular voltage became central, right? It's literally that electrical charge across your cell membranes, the foundation for every physiological process. It's, for nutrient transport, for detoxification, for immune function, energy production, all of that jazz. And whenever the voltage drops, that's when stuff goes down, right? The cells cannot communicate properly. Mitochondria can't efficiently make ATP, and antioxidant recycling, like glutathione regeneration, slows down. So when you think about pathogens, viruses, bacteria, fungi, mold, they're not just like random invaders, okay? They thrive in specific environments. And low voltage cells create the perfect conditions for them because when ATP is low, cells have less energy to maintain that membrane integrity, right? The ion gradients, the detoxification processes. Okay. So pathogens exploit this weakness. So when your mitochondria aren't producing enough ATP, that sodium potassium pump, it fails to maintain proper ionic gradients. And this basically means that the cell can't regulate its internal environment, right? It can't take in the nutrients properly. It can't release the waste properly. It can't signal molecules. They end up getting mismanaged. And then the pathogens, they're like, "Oh, dang, we can get in here." It's like way easier for them to like invade or persist. And so that poor membrane potential, which everyone's talking about cell membrane health right now, the electrical charge across that cell membrane becomes diminished. Okay, it's not just electricity, it's like the driving force for the nutrient uptake, for the waste removal, and cellular communications. And the pathogens sense these vulnerabilities and they can colonize more easily because the membrane no longer functions as that robust barrier. Okay, so then you have things like glutathione and redox capacity become compromised, right? And then you have oxidative stress rising when you have low voltage. Now, copper and iron are both involved in redox reactions, and their mismanagement can generate damaging free radicals. This is Fenton chemistry. Now, if the cell is low in voltage, its antioxidant systems are depleted, making it much easier for pathogens to thrive in the oxidative chaos. At some point, I'm going to talk to you guys about mold stealing the iron and the copper and all the stuff that it does another time. Okay. Now, when we have the inflammatory signaling dysregulated, we have chronic low-grade inflammation. That raises hepcidin levels and it alters ceruloplasmin activity. So hepcidin blocks iron export from cells, which is a protective mechanism that inadvertently sequesters iron where it's not useful for cellular function. Ha! Woo! That was a slip. Meanwhile, copper-dependent enzymes like ceruloplasmin, hepcidin, they cannot mobilize iron safely if copper is low or dysfunctional. And this actually leaves your cells really vulnerable, and they become starved of these critical minerals, but still exposed to the oxidative stress. So that's just a little something, something. But put simply, a low voltage cell is a weak, uncharged, poorly defended environment. Pathogens see it as hospitable. They can colonize, they can replicate, they can avoid the immune surveillance. Now, high voltage cells, in contrast, they maintain the ionic balance, the detoxification, the antioxidant recycling, and they leave the pathogens fewer niches to exploit. So let's talk about what does low voltage actually look like in practical, observable terms, right? Because I've seen this in myself. I see it in clients all the time. Here's a couple ways we could see it. Low basal body temperature, slower enzymatic reactions, poor thyroid conversion, and reduced peripheral circulation. Okay, all you people who have cold hands and feet, or you're always cold. And then, of course, the fatigue, the brain fog, the malaise, right? The mitochondria are not producing sufficient ATP, and the electric transport chain is inefficient. Low copper or iron impairs that cytochrome C oxidase, or these iron cluster enzymes, right? And that further limits that ATP production. So it makes the fatigue even deeper, right? Like it makes the energy, uh, energy bankruptcy like worse, right? Harder to get out of. And then we have things like slow digestion, right? Like because you don't have anything to put towards it, right? Bloating, gut dysbiosis, right? So you have this cellular energy deficit and it impairs your digestive enzyme production, your gut barrier integrity, right? And then that gives the microbes more opportunity to overgrow. Typically not the ones we want. Or the way they grow is imbalanced, right? Which then also too creates that chronic susceptibility to infections, or we can call them flares, right? Flare-ups. Pathogens exploit the combination of the low voltage, the oxidative stress, and then the nutrient mismanagement. Okay, so if you look at mineral imbalances on HTMA, very simple, not deep dive here, like low potassium or high sodium or low magnesium, these are signals of poor cellular membrane potential and low energy. And these minerals directly affect the cell's ability to maintain voltage, and that influences the intracellular environment that pathogens need to survive. And this is why chasing pathogens alone rarely works. I mean, does it work? If you just try to kill them without rebuilding the terrain, they're going to keep coming back, right? So obviously, the solution is never just going to be some anti pathogen thing like antimicrobial or even avoidance. Oh my word. Um, it really has to be voltage first, right? So for me, the approach was multi-layered, right? Obviously, I worked on my circadian alignment, right? Like we all could be doing this. We all could be doing this constantly. It's so easy to slip out of, right? Because nobody in society does this, right? Wake with the sunlight, sleep with darkness, let it optimize your hormone signaling and your cellular redox balance, right? Mitochondria respond to light cues. So, proper circadian rhythm allows for peak ATP production during the active hours and then efficient repair during rest. Mineral optimization, right? Okay. There's so much to say. I mean, like, we need them. They help us with energy production. You know, the sodium potassium balance is so crucial because it impacts how the cell functions, right? And then the magnesium, man, I mean, it's used for 6 out of the 8 steps of ATP, right? Like, and it's got so many roles in so many enzymatic processes. So those 3 are biggies. Like, they're all important. But most people are not getting these anywhere near right. So these minerals, I'm getting too excited, you guys. I do this. Minerals literally enable the pumps and redox enzymes that maintain the voltage, okay? And then back to the hydration and the structured water. We get proper cellular conductivity, nutrient transport, right? Like we want those nutrients to go where they're supposed to go. We want to be able to use them. We want the water to structure within the cells because then it affects the proton gradients, the ATP synthase and efficiency, intracellular signaling. That creates the medium in which the voltage can exist and thrive. I hope you guys are tracking with me. We have to say it in these terms so you understand the biology piece to learn how your body works. Ultimately, we can simplify it, in simple terms, but if you don't ever hear it explained properly, you're not going to have the context for the simplified terms and you might miss a lot of nuance. And you might not be convinced to take the extra measures, right? So this is why I'm going into all of this. So if you improve your foundational elements, the cells themselves become inhospitable to pathogens, right? Your body stops being a playground for invaders and it starts being a fortress. And this is the essence of the terrain-based healing, which is the core principle behind the Rewilded Wellness concept that I have here. Restore the inner ecosystem first and the rest will follow, okay? Doesn't mean we don't ever need a little assistance in addition to that, but we have it as backwards. We try all the other stuff first and we miss all the foundations. And then we are in a battle constantly with ourselves and yada, yada, yada. You've seen it. Okay, so voltage isn't just abstract, right? It's literally the movement of electrons and ions across the membranes. Okay, sunlight, minerals, they come together in this elegant way. You know that sunlight has to hit your bare skin, right? It's going to trigger the production of vitamin D for one thing, but much more than that. It actually drives photonic energy through your cells, particularly your mitochondria. It's not just about vitamin D only, y'all. And then this light energy actually, it excites your electrons in that transport chain, and it fuels the ATP production. So every time a photon hits, it actually helps generate a proton gradient across the inner mitochondrial membrane, essentially charging the battery of the cell. Okay. And then, as we know, minerals are the cofactors that make this happen. Okay. They're not optional. Magnesium, iron, copper, zinc, potassium, all of them. They are literally the parts that allow the electrons to flow safely, the pumps to move the ions across the membranes, and to have that energy synthesized, right? I've already talked about the copper, the iron, helping harness the sunlight-derived energy into the mitochondria. We could go on and on about this. You know that potassium and sodium are big, big, big players. They maintain the voltage across the cell membrane. They're extra and intracellular, right? They allow the nutrients in, the toxins out. Like they signal the correct flow, okay? And without all these minerals playing together nice, remember, minerals are a team. They're a concert. They don't act alone. And also the sunlight piece, once it hits you and it hits your cells, right? The energy isn't effectively captured or used if you don't have both. It's kind of like having, I don't know much about this, but it's like having solar panels without the wiring and the connection. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about how it connects to your gut, okay? Because your microbiome also thrives or suffers based on cellular voltage. So when the cells have high voltage, the gut lining is energized, nutrient absorption is optimized, and immune signaling keeps microbial populations in balance. Low voltage cells mean slower gut motility, weaker barrier integrity, and a terrain where opportunistic microbes, bacteria, yeast, fungi, can gain ground. So essentially, voltage isn't just about your mitochondria, it's the foundational energy landscape that shapes your internal ecosystem, including your thyroid function, your circadian rhythm, your gut health, the whole 9 yards. Okay? So when we think about all these three together, we're literally building the environment where our microbiome can also flourish and pathogens can't. And our metabolism can finally operate at full capacity. All right, so again, another reason why I start with the terrain first in this Rewilded Wellness approach, because if you layer in too many other interventions or like protocols to fix a root cause, you know, and you never address this, it's not going to stick. Okay, so we've got the voltage, the microbiome, the thyroid, the circadian rhythm. This is the connected ecosystem, right? When you think of your microbiome, it's like a miniature ecosystem living inside you. It thrives on signals from your cell and your environment, right? You've got the high voltage cells. They send the right electrical and biochemical cues. So those tight junctions in your gut lining stay strong. The immune signaling is balanced, and the microbes that actually support digestion are supported. The nutrients are better absorbed, and your neurotransmitter production can flourish in this environment. Now, when your voltage is low or when it drops, all of those signals are weakened. And that's when the gut barrier function falters. That's when nutrient absorption suffers. That's when opportunistic microbes find the environment hospitable. And this is part of why low voltage states often show up as things like bloating, dysbiosis, recurrent infections. Your ecosystem is literally misreading the energy landscape, right? And your thyroid is right in the middle of this. Proper thyroid signaling depends on voltage, mineral cofactors, sunlight-driven circadian rhythms, okay? I know I'm repeating myself, but you guys know what is it? What's that phrase? Repetition is the mother of all learning. Okay. Low cellular voltage actually slows that peripheral conversion of T4 to T3. Okay. That means the cells aren't getting the energetic instruction that they need. When your thyroid can't operate optimally, your metabolism slows down. So does everything else, right? That means your circulation is weaker, and then energy for the gut lining and the immune system drops. Again, favoring microbes that should not be able to dominate. So I think circadian biology is like a really big piece of the puzzle, right? We have the sunlight cues, setting the timing for hormonal cycles, mitochondrial activity, and even microbial rhythms in the gut. So when your light exposure is off, your cells lose synchronization, your voltage dips, and your internal ecosystem, the microbiome, the thyroid, the adrenals, even your mineral utilization struggles to keep up. So, put simply, cellular voltage guided by sunlight and minerals creates the terrain your microbiome needs to thrive, your thyroid to function, and your whole system to maintain balance. All right? Again, terrain first, terrain first, terrain first. So, if you build your environment, your inner ecosystem with sunlight, hydration, and proper mineralization, you're going to set the stage for your microbiome to flourish, for your thyroid, all that stuff, okay? All the things you say are the problem for you, whether, oh, my metabolism, or oh, I can't lose weight, or oh, my thyroid, or oh, my hormones, or oh, da 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 da. All the things, okay? Now, protocols, supplements can help. I do think we need them to some degree, for sure. But without this foundation in place and building upon it continuously, you're, I don't know, you're essentially trying to like have a garden or, I don't know, make a garden flourish without sunlight or soil, right? Like, how are you going to have well-rooted, healthy plants? Now I do want to talk about there is also an emotional voltage component. Okay. This is important because when we enter this like work on our health, a lot of people don't realize, okay, emotions aren't separate. Your psyche isn't separate. Your mental health isn't separate. It's not something that's separate. It's all, you are one whole, and all of these aspects of you all run on voltage. Okay. So there's an emotional voltage component, right? Jerry Tennant talks about this. You might want to go like watch a video of him explaining it. It's like really sensible. Um, so for me, this was huge in my own healing journey. Like, I did not grow up with emotional support. I know a lot of us haven't, right? Like, my parents were from the silent generation. They came out of the war, right? Like, there was zero emotional anything. It was just like, do we even have feelings? Do we even communicate about life? Like, it was just like silent, quiet. So then, my parents' generation didn't get that nurturance. So then they didn't know what the heck to do around emotions, So I grew up was like, my emotional needs were not met, right? I'm sure many of you can relate. I am 51, by the way, child of the 70s. Some of you are younger. If you're younger, it's just compounded, right? Like, your parents couldn't, it's just like a compounded thing right now. Being alive on the planet, we haven't understood emotions, okay? So it's really important to understand that there is a voltage component. It requires energy in your body. Now, I definitely touched on it some in my thyroid episode last year, Rethinking Thyroid. Go check that one out. It was in December. It was really, really good. But there is a connection between unprocessed emotions, trauma, and cellular voltage. We're all waking up to this, especially post-2020. Now, everyone's realizing their nervous systems are, air quotes, Lydia's air quoting, dysregulated. It's really, we don't know how to support ourselves in light of the times. It's crazy, right? But here's key. When you increase your gains, sunlight, minerals, hydration, and your cellular voltage rises, okay? And there's a lot of other things you can do too. I'm not saying these are the only things, but these are the biggies. Obviously, stop using, toxins in your life, right? Like, stop doing obvious things. Like, there's so much to this, but like, I'm giving you the big ones, okay? Okay, your cellular voltage is rising. Your body's starting to bring stored emotions to the surface, okay? These aren't just random moods, all right? You're feeling emotions and you're like, what is going on? I'm feeling all this stuff, right? And, they are likely patterns your body has been holding on to, sometimes your whole life, sometimes for years. Sometimes you don't even remember how they got there, right? And if you aren't aware or you don't have the tools to process them, they may show up as, I don't know, tension, fatigue, inflammation, irritability, or a feeling that something's really off. But the amazing thing is, this is actually a sign your body has more energy and the environment it needs to start processing and integrating these emotions. Emotions have a real electrical impact on the body. They end up getting stored in your fascia. Um, Jerry Tennant describes them as influencing electron spin. Essentially, they directly affect cellular energy and function. So if they're stuck, your voltage dips. When you give your body the right conditions, it starts to release and integrate those patterns more naturally. Okay. Obviously, sometimes we actually have to like see that and face that and, process that too. Okay. Now, for me, I started doing some deeper emotional work in 2016. I was terrified, you guys. I had grown up my whole life not knowing what the heck to do with my emotions. But it was lovely to get started on that work. It was actually very gentle. I have some old content on my website about all that. But by the time 2020 came around, I realized, oh man, there's a lot more to go. I gotta go deeper. And I also wanted to step out of the fear-based reactive patterns I had been living in, particularly around my chemical sensitivities and the mold exposure. I was like, I do not want to be afraid to walk through the world. It's just like a frustrating way to be, right? So, you know, here's where also too we could step in for a touch to talk about ancestry, genetics, even astrology. They all come into play here, right? You've inherited tendencies, patterns, right? Both genetic and epigenetic. And they set the stage for how your body holds emotional and energetic patterns. Now, astrology isn't just reflected in your uh, natal chart, only astrology is reflected. I'm sorry, it is reflected in your natal chart. I don't know why I said it isn't. Astrology isn't just I don't know where you guys are at with astrology. A lot of people think of astrology as interpreting what's going on in the world. But if you look at your natal chart, there is a lot going on in that chart that can help you understand more about yourself. Okay. It's not like fate. It's just like a blueprint of, where your body was at in when you were born. And so all your core placements, your sun, your rising, your moon sign, the house positions, along with all these other elemental energies, right? Earth, water, fire, air. There's so many aspects to a birth chart. Even if you start to understand a few key layers, it can give you context for why you tend towards certain patterns, right? You tend toward certain emotional challenges or stress responses or, so on and so forth, right? I'm going to talk to you guys at some point about my Chiron placement and my story around my Chiron return because I learned so much through that. Okay, so for those of you who are into astrology, this can really help you out on your healing journey. Um, Understanding how to work with who you really are and not fight against the energy that you have and it's there and really come to terms with some things. That can create a lot of space for true voltage and your health to thrive. When I started to learn to work with certain placements, I definitely stopped draining myself, right? For example, let's just say it that way. So, and then when you understand your genetic mutations, it's also kind of a way to understand, holy moly, this is ancestral, right? my parents didn't get what they needed to give me what I needed. And then, we can understand like, oh, wow, this has been a degeneration situation going on. And therefore, this has impacted me, right? So instead of like looking at genetic mutations as like these like markers to fix and throw a bunch of nutrients at, we can get into the nuance around it and like really work with ourselves in this more holistic way, because it's more of like this, you are an ecosystem, my friends, right? Anyways, I find it all to be very helpful, very supportive, and that's why I wanted to just mention it. So here's like, if I were to give you a core insight, I want to leave you with that. It's not about chasing protocols, y'all. It's not about obsessing over lab numbers. It's not about trying to fix any one part of yourself in isolation. Healing is about creating the environment your body needs to function at full capacity, which is voltage for one piece, right? Obviously, that is a big piece, and there's more to say about a lot of things, but that's what I covered today. Right. So, when you function at full capacity, you're functioning more fully physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, spiritually, right? You have vitality. You have metabolic flexibility, resiliency, strength. Okay. Now, in my framework, I have the 7 pillars fundamental to human health, and I covered that in that thyroid episode last year, right? Right. So sunlight and circadian biology, like I covered that today. That's a biggie. Huge, huge, huge. Breath, air quality, right? Like we'll get into that more soon. Water and hydration, movement, um, big, big, big deal. Nutrients, right? Like food, what you put into yourself, right? Like the quality, so on and so forth. That includes your minerals. Relationships, community, connection, love, intimacy, all of that. Any relationship to yourself, to others, to nature, to the planet. And finally, purpose and embodiment, like living in alignment with who you truly are and what you are here to contribute, which is another reason why I love astrology. It really helps you with that. Okay. Now, of these 7, sunlight, minerals, and hydration are key spark. They impact all the others. Without them, the other pillars are harder to optimize. But when you focus on these as like a micro daily practice, if you will, even in small amounts to start over time, they cascade into every other area of life. And then your metabolism stabilizes, your circadian rhythms strengthen, your energy rises, your body can process emotions, you can move through stress, you can engage fully with your relationships and your purpose. And this is exactly what we begin to do in my Rewilded Wellness coaching program. Over 6 months, we weave together all these pieces, right? Your heritage, your mineral analysis, your biome effects results, your genetic mutations, your astrology birth chart. And this is so that we can rebuild your voltage, your foundation, really restore your inner ecosystem, your terrain, right? This isn't just like a protocol or a program. It's personalized. It's a roadmap. It's so you can build towards sustainable, deep-rooted health. It helps you step out of reactive patterns, increase your energy, live more fully in alignment with who you are. All right, cool. Now, if that's something that sounds good to you, if you need support, you really want to go in, you want to get support with that, you can check it out in the link in the show notes below. I'd be more than happy to hear from you. So check that out. But I hope you guys found this episode helpful. I hope it deepened your understanding. I hope it gave you some incentive to motivate you to create some new micro actions for yourself in your life as we are ending the summer. By the way, fall equinox is on the 22nd, which is just a couple days away from me recording this. So we're heading into the fall. We're heading into the winter. It's not too late to start working on your habits around light. You can do it any time of the year. You really should start now. Like a lot of people, when I talk about sunlight, they worry. They get way ahead of themselves. They think about the winter. They're like, "Oh my God, I live in the North. Like, what do I do? What do I do?" It's like, well, hold on. You're alive right now today where you live. So do something now, like right now. Like, what can you do? How can you look at the whole of your day and how you're living around light and start to make some adjustments now? Don't worry about the big picture future. Start now. All right, guys. Well, that is it for this episode. I hope you found it helpful. Until next time, stay wild and stay well.